Hi everyone, Sheldon here. Before we start this episode, I just wanted to give you a little heads up about a problem we had. We had a guest on who is super cool and super talented, and everything sounded fine during the recording. Unfortunately, we discovered after we were done that there was a problem with the Skype recorder we used, and his audio was barely registerable. For a moment, we thought we may have to scrap the episode, but Mike, being the audio genius that he is, was able to salvage it. So we have the episode for you. It's just not at the high quality level you have come to expect from us. Our apologies to you and our guest Alexander, but we think you guys will enjoy it, and it is our new favorite episode despite this issue, and that is in no small part thanks to our awesome guests. So without further ado, here it is. Thank you. This week's episode of The Graveyard Shift is brought to you by Chelsea F., Brenda P., and past guest of the show, director Trisha Lee. All three of these lovely ladies have suggested this week's featured movie, and it is a good one. Not only do we get to talk about a great movie, but we get to do it with a guest that we are very excited to have on the show. Horror author Alexander Stephen Brown joins us to not only break down the movie with us, but to talk about some of his work as well. And with all that to catch your attention, why would I make you wait any longer? Let's get started. My name is Sheldon, and this is The Graveyard Shift, horror with Sheldon and Mike. Welcome to episode 12 of the Graveyard Shift Horror Podcast, where each week we watch a movie from the horror category, usually one selected by one of you fine listeners, and serve up all the bits we think you need to know to give you an idea about if it's something you want to see or not. We'll talk about some production details, what we liked, what we didn't like, which is usually more fun, plus any other info that we think might be relevant. And yes, I said we because working the graveyard shift can get lonely. Please say hello to the only guy that thought The Train to Busan was another Human Centipede sequel, my co-host, Mike.
Hey, everybody.
How are you doing, Mike?
Well, I was in the mood to watch something truly terrifying, horrifying, something that would rattle my core and just make me question humanity. And when I was done watching the news, I decided to watch our movie of the week.
Yeah, that's actually getting pretty scary. So, I gotta say, I'm very happy because we have extra company today. So please say hello to our special guest, the author of The Night the Jack-O-Lantern Went Out, Cerinthia Falls, and Traumatized, horror writer Alexander Stephen Brown. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure, absolutely. So, first of all, I have to apologize because I got a copy of your book, Traumatized, with my plan being to have it read before we got you on, but unfortunately, time has not allowed me to get any extra reading done lately. I did manage to read some of your online articles, though.
Oh, awesome. I hope you enjoyed them.
I did. I read your one about your little tribute to women in horror, your favorite H.P. Lovecraft stories, and your article about the lesser-known Stephen King novels.
Yeah, those were fun to write. That's actually through a website that my publisher started, Biblarati. And if you go to my website, I'll have links and stuff like that on there for that. But we'll get to that later. Biblarati started with him reaching out to me and saying that he wanted me to be the horror aspect of that blog. And pretty much it is a blog that is intended for book lovers. Mm-hmm. And being a lover of books, I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And I've been writing for Biblarati now for about a good 4 or 5 months. I try to cover at least 3 books per blog. And luckily, I started reading when I was about, 10, 11 years old, reading things that were beyond grade school level, such as the Stephen Kings and Clive Barkers. And a lot of it made a very big impression on me, so I was able to still recall some of the classics I had read while I'm still reading contemporary books now that are mainstream and indie.
Nice. Yeah, I especially like the the little-known Stephen King books, because if you ask someone what their favorite Stephen King novel is, 99% of the time you're going to hear Carrie, Pet Sematary, and The Shining. And there's certainly nothing wrong with that, but I don't think a lot of people bothered with his work after the 90s so much. So good to shine a little light on some of his lesser-known stuff.
Oh, totally. And the thing is, I mean, if you are a person who's just getting into reading, of course, the first things you're going to go for are the titles that you've heard everyone talk about. And so if you've already read those titles, but you don't know what else to gravitate to, then you're kind of stuck with, well, where do I go now? Unless you just kind of seek out your own entertainment without recommendations from anyone else, which sometimes I do that. Sometimes I just simply run across a book, haven't heard anything about it, looks good, synopsis is cool, give it a shot.
Nice. Okay, so I have some questions for our listeners that may not be familiar with your work. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. So if someone decided to read one of your books right now, which one would you recommend?
Oh, wow. They're all very close to my heart. I will say this much. Each book that I do is based around a matter of preference, of course. If the reader prefers short stories and they prefer fiction that is more young adult based, then The Night the Jack-o'-lantern Went Out would be more suitable for them, especially if it's near Halloween. It's intended to put you in the Halloween spirit.
Right.
If you are a gore hound and you want your horror to be a little bit more extreme than Traumatized, that was actually banned one time, so that's more for the extreme horror.
That's a badge of honor.
Wow.
Oh, it was, yes. Also had a church run me out of a signing once. I was like, all right, I'm done with this. I'm not sticking around. And let's see, if you prefer to read novels, then Serenthia Falls is a werewolf novel, but I did not use the tropes. I had a person at the last convention I was giving a panel at, and the person had said, I loved your book, Serenthia Falls. The best way I sum it up to my friends is it is a coming-of-age werewolf torture porn book.
Oh,
so I'm like, wow, I'll have to start using that.
wow, for sure. Yeah, that is quite a good description. And yeah, I'm glad you said that about Traumatized, because that's the one I have, and you describe it just the way I would want to find a book right now. So,
Well, if you
In
ask,
front of a bonfire in front of a church.
you know what? If a church wants to burn my books, that's fine. They have to buy them to start with. So
and you
if
know what? That's marketing gold right there.
oh God, yeah. I'm still trying to find a way for Westboro Baptist Church to protest one of my signings. Hopefully, it'll happen one day.
You can't buy that kind of publicity.
I'm going to send them I'm going to tweet to them and tell them, like, hey, you should ban this book. You guys should read this and, start protesting it, because it's awful.
This guy's book made Jesus nauseous.
Well, one of the stories in Traumatized is actually inspired by them. It's called The God Complex, and that's actually one of the stories that caused the book to get banned in Arkansas. And pretty much years have passed since then, and so I've done signings in Arkansas. It's fine. But pretty much I was to sign at a smaller town in Arkansas, and they had purchased my books, and people were coming in, they were buying the books, reading them, and saying that they loved them. And the shop owner, which was like an indie business, they finally took the initiative to read the product they were selling. And so I get this call. We had a signing planned, and they're like, we're going to have to ask you not to come. We've spoke with other people of the community who are business owners. And I mean, they really went into the depth of it being city officials who did not want this kind of work in their city. And they felt that it was sacrilegious. They felt that it was promoting the idea that religion is evil. But in all honesty, I used a figure such as the Westboro Baptist Church and wrote about them in a sense where religion can be a beautiful thing in the right hands, and the wrong hands, it can create a Holocaust. And this, of course, goes a whole lot more beyond what a person is able to do in humanity. So it does tie in some spiritualism there too. So it is a work of fiction, but it was inspired by, the hate group.
Yeah, well,
Oh well,
people like that get offended when a work forces them to think or be self-critical.
Well, my motto is if you're not pissing someone off, you're not being yourself.
there
Amen.
you go. Yeah. Okay, yo, if I wasn't already sold, if I didn't already buy the book, I'd be buying it right now. So I'm
Well,
sold again.
He's the Oscar Wilde of our day.
maybe someday. I think I have the drinking down.
Step one. So you
Okay,
mentioned
so he's
that.
the Hemingway of our day so far.
Well, somehow I found out I was related to William Faulkner, like as a distant relative. I haven't gone and done the research to it, so I don't necessarily know if there's just one drop of his blood in my body or maybe two drops. But, I tell people that's why I drink bourbon. So.
So you mentioned that you started writing at 10 years old. Was 10 or 11? Was that when you pretty much confirmed that writing was going to be your thing?
Yeah. When I first started writing, it was honestly nothing more than a kid with crayons and pieces of paper. The stories I wrote didn't last anything more than just about maybe 2 paragraphs at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of consider that to be the time in my childhood when I was identifying with what my preferences were and what type of art medias I enjoyed. As far as drawing or painting goes, I've never been skilled enough to do that. Most of my skills lie in writing and photography. And those are elements I started picking up, I'd say age 13 and up. And it's all just a practice run during that time. And it's trying to identify, okay, well, do I want to be an artist? Do I want to perhaps go to school and be a doctor? Do I want to do this? And so it's that identifying stage. And when I was in high school, I ended up taking a creative writing class that went on and pushed it where I was no longer just making stories that were a paragraph to a few pages long, to the point where I was now writing stories that were 15 to 20 pages long. And that's when I started taking it more seriously. That's when I started doing more research. And a lot of kids, they were doing other things such as hanging out nonstop. And I'm not going to lie, I did hang out quite a bit as a kid. I mean, I was a typical kid as far as that goes. But also at the same time, I had no problem in reading reference books. And I mean, just about everyone else I knew about that age, they would be bored to tears with reference books. Myself, I was just enthralled to learn about different religions or philosophies or how the mind works with serial killers and so forth.
Nice.
On that note, I'd like to know, was horror always your go-to genre, or was it something that you fell into as you got more into the writing?
It was always my go-to. When I was a kid, I have my grandpa to thank for this, actually. When I was a kid, my grandfather introduced me to Night of the Living Dead when I was 5 years old. And since then,
Excellent.
I was completely hooked. Um, Also, during my adolescence, I had suffered from a lot of nightmares. I was the kind of kid who was afraid to even go outside at night. Once the sun went down, I was inside. And for some reason, this phobia, it stuck with me for years. And it wasn't until I was really a teenager that I started warming up to it more. And even when I was writing those 1 to 2 to 3 paragraphs, it was also getting my fears out. It was putting it onto a visual for myself to see and reflect upon. And I think that art, for the most part, it doesn't only comment on society or what you're going through, but it also helps you to purge whatever fears that you might have bottled up inside of you.
Wow, that's pretty
This is
darn.
great.
Yeah. So, like, what were your influences as you, like, took your perspective of horror onto paper?
Well, growing up, I had always been a fan of urban legends and superstitions and old wives' tales, folklore, that kind of stuff. So I had always been attracted to that. Um, the good old campfire story is what still enthralls me to this day. That's one of the best forms of entertainment I can think of, is just to sit around a campfire and speak about urban myth of the area. And so, as I have this that is in me already planted, I'm reading books by Stephen King, Clive Barker, Dean Koontz, back when he actually used to write horror.
Mm-hmm.
And these were things that were molding it more so into horror stories that I could create. And then, of course, the older I got, the further back I went and started reading the Lovecraft stories. And I read some of the other classics like Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, even Washington Irving. He's one of my favorites because he has that whole folk story style to the legend of Sleepy Hollow, or even The Devil and Tom Walker. It's that beautiful urban myth in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we move on to the next question, which I believe is Sheldon's, I have to say that when I was shopping today, I was at the mall, and the car that was parked next to us had two things which you just reminded me of. It had the Jesus fish, but instead it had like flippers on the bottom and tentacles in the front and wings in the back, and it said Cthulhu inside.
No, it's. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Please.
Oh,
keep
please.
going.
What were you about to say?
I was going to say it's interesting that you say you saw that recently, because today, as I was out and about, a guy walked past me and he was wearing a T-shirt that looked like the Kool-Aid Man, but it was in the shape of Cthulhu and it said Cthulhu Aid. And I'm like
Nice.
thinking, wow, I'm probably the only person who's actually getting this as he's walking amongst the civilians today.
Is he bursting through the wall going, right?
Actually, he was. He was, yeah.
Of course. And the second thing, you know those little stick figures that they have of like a boy and a girl, just to let you know, like, oh, I've got two kids in this car?
Yeah.
And this one was a stick boy and a stick girl running in terror from Cthulhu behind them.
Oh, is that what those stick figures are for? To let you know, like, is it supposed to represent, like, your kids or something?
Either that or it's their kill count.
That's what I thought. I thought it was a pedestrian kill score. Like, okay, sorry. Wow, I really got to go.
They've kind of gotten creative about that, because I've seen a few where they were zombie based.
Yeah, I
It
think
was
I've
like
seen this as well.
you see the mother and father running and they're dragging the kids behind them, and there's a zombie chasing them.
Okay, so, Sheldon, what's your next one?
Well, Alexander, I'm glad you mentioned earlier when you talked about, you actually used the word your art, your writing is your art. Glad you said that, because horror is definitely an art, and personally, I don't think that horror gets the respect that it deserves. Do you
No.
ever? Yeah, do you ever feel that there's a bit of a bias against horror?
Yeah, I do. As a matter of fact, in mainstream bookstores, you see a bias against it. You can go into a lot of mainstream bookstores now, and horror is simply summarized under the fiction category, or it's blended in with the suspense category.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, there was actually categories for horror. And that's just something I don't see anymore. But also, at the same time, you go into a like a Best Buy or something like that. I'm just throwing a name out there, but any sort of retailer that has DVDs, and for the most part, they try to categorize the horror in with the sci-fi or the suspense, and it's almost like they're trying to stamp the word out. But pretty much, I think that it is an art that doesn't get the credit it deserves, because, truth be it, horror and also sci-fi for the longest has spent a majority of its time commenting on what's going on in society and
Hmm.
also what's going on with the human psyche. And a lot of, if you go back and read books that came from the 70s or 80s, they're almost like a time capsule for that time.
For
And
sure.
so I think a lot of people just look at the books and consider, oh, well, this is another gore filled book, or this one is just another creature book, and they just leave it be, which, some books are like that. Some books are leave your brain at the door and just read for the sake of it. But then other books, you pick it up and for the most part actually gain a message from it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's because horror if you're right, horror should be its own umbrella because we got asked a question a while ago on a previous episode what our favorite horror movie was. And we said like, well, that's kind of a tough question and we said how about give one for each subgenre of horror that we can think of. And we end up having like 10 subgenres and probably could have went on, but we didn't we kind of had to wrap up the episode. We couldn't keep going. So and yeah, like it's unfortunate to see that horror being grouped in with other genres because if anything, there should be other genres grouped in with horror. In my opinion, like there's sci-fi horror, there's the supernatural horror. So yeah, it should be in my opinion, the reverse should be happening.
Oh, and then there's what's Jordan, the guy from Jordan Peele.
Yeah.
He came up with that new movie, the social horror,
Yes, yes.
Get Out. So, yeah, horror needs more categories, not just the name horror.
And I do completely agree with that. As a matter of fact, it's funny that this is brought up because one of the future blogs I'm going to write is based on sci-fi horror, and it's going to cover the books Who Goes There, The Puppet Masters, and also Body Snatchers.
Oh my
And
God, who
Wow.
goes there? The original inspiration for the thing.
Hmm.
oh God, yes. And the thing is, so many people they don't consider classics like that. If they do, it's just pure sci-fi. They don't really merge it over into that sci-fi horror. And I don't know why they're afraid to do so, because I mean it's sci-fi to start with. You already kind of have it with a negative reputation with some organizations, especially ones that are highly religious.
Hmm.
There was
Definitely.
one
Yeah.
sci-fi story that became horror in its own right. I think it was by the guy William Gaines, the creator of Mad Magazine. He was trying to publish a story of this astronaut that found these two robots. I think they were like red and blue robots, and they were quarreling over each other. Like the red robots are superior than the blue robots, and then eventually, like the astronaut had to leave the planet because this race just couldn't figure out that the color what's on your surface just doesn't matter. And when he takes the helmet off, it's a black astronaut. And the editor was so furious. I mean, like, no, not the editor. The like, there was, I forget who it was, but like, they refused to let him publish his own magazine. And he was just friggin' furious. He's saying that's the whole point.
Exactly.
He has to
and
be black. That's the thing.
And the thing is, there is a way to make a point with your art, which I consider that art as well. Any sort of media that depicts images, writing, that is a form of art, or theatricals, And my philosophy is, especially when I write, I don't use my writing as a podium for me to stand on and preach. You can read my stories as nothing more than stories. But if you look in between the lines, you'll see that it's something much more deeper. And as an author, what I aim to do is I aim to make a point with the story versus using it as my soapbox to stand on.
Yeah, the best example is the one you're not really making an example of.
Exactly.
Hmm. So when it comes to your writing, what is the hardest part about the writing process?
I would say editing, and even though I consider that to be the hardest part, it's definitely something that I do enjoy. If you're going to label yourself as an author or an artist, you have to love every angle of that craft. You can't say, okay, well, I'm going to write this oh God, I have to edit it now. I can't believe I have to do this. You can't moan about that because it comes with the territory. You have to have a passion all the way around for that subject. And if you don't, then yeah, you can still be an author. I don't know if you would exactly be enjoying every part of the work, because even if you're not editing your own work, you're having someone else edit it, then send it back to you to make those corrections. And there's still that headache of, oh God, I have to edit this, which with what I do, I have to edit my own work. And when I say I have to do it for my own well-being. I do it because I want it to look as perfect as possible before it gets over to the publisher. At this point, the publisher sends it over to at least 2 different editors. They go over it for content matter and also spelling. And, you know, a lot of people, they freak out if a word is missed, like, let's say, a misspelling or something. And they think it's the kiss of death because there's a misspelling in your book. Well, I have news. Because the thing is, I've read quite a few mainstream books that have typos from beginning to end, and they're still fantastic books at the end of the day. But if we're talking about something where there's like about 12 to 13 typos per page, then that's something I can't read. I don't care how good the storyline is. It just it keeps breaking you out. But I edit it myself, send it over to the publisher. They edit it, send it back to me. And before a book is actually ready to go through print, it has probably been edited about 13 to 14 times between myself and the other 2 editors.
Wow.
So it's something that if you're going to get into the craft of writing, you have to be willing to find joys even in the most grating of moments and make those joys something that you become a master at, even though it might be unnerving to start with.
As the guy who edits this podcast, I can agree.
Yeah, because I ain't touching that. So I have a question. This is from a friend of mine who's an avid reader, avid movie watcher, and he said, if you're having an author on your show, you've got to ask him this. He said, for the most part, book-to-movie translations never turn out the best. Have you ever seen one that you thought pretty much nailed it?
The closest one that hit me on a scare factor, also kind of an emotional factor too, because there was some pretty good character development in the movie. I would have to say The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty, but also at the same time, Blatty had his hand in the movie script quite a bit as well. I would probably have to say The Exorcist.
Nice. That, yeah, I totally agree.
Have you seen the series?
Not the series yet. It's on my Hulu to watch, but pretty much I haven't had the opportunity. I've been wrapping up Traumatized 2, editing out all of my overuses of was and been and had, and pretty much like when I write, I just write from beginning to end, and then I go back and I'm kicking myself in the butt. Okay, time to find something that's a little bit more appealing to the eye versus just using generic words. But I do want to get around to watching it, and at least I can binge watch it at this point versus having to wait week after week.
Excellent.
Oh, excellent. So, in your long, storied history of reading books, which one would you say has stood out most to you, either like just in terms of scare or, what's really driven you in particular? Like,
all right. Even though this is not flat out horror, this kind of goes back to what we were just discussing a little bit ago. It's one of those kind of gray books where it is horror, but has elements of something else in it, such as fantasy. The most beloved book that I own and that I've ever read is The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. It is so beautifully whimsical, but at the same time, it's just so brooding with evil. It's intended for young adults to be able to read as much as adults. And I had read that book when I was very young, and I found the comparison between innocence and a loss of innocence, and also those who are taking innocence away. The comparison between the three emotions throughout the book is something that really stuck with me, and the characters, none of them were just flat. They had many dimensions to them, and even the ones that I hated, I loved hating them. And so that was probably that's probably the strongest book that I have closest to my heart.
Excellent. So that's your favorite book out of the way. Now, since this is a movie podcast, how about same question but for a movie?
All right. Let's see. Ooh, I would have to say, if I had friends over at the house, I would yank this movie out in a heartbeat, and it would simply be just to show how beautiful a horror film can be. And that would actually be a French film. I believe it's French. Les Diaboliques.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Pretty much when it first came out, it had been noted that this had out Hitchcocked Hitchcock. And of course, this came out way before I was born, unless I was in a past life or something. But pretty much when I was watching the movie for the first time, I was very young and I didn't mind watching subtitles. And it was a movie that I felt had a strong creep factor to it. It had a good relationship between all characters, and there was even just a little bit of tongue-in-cheek to it, but I really appreciate the artistic value of it and also how conniving the characters are in that film.
Excellent. Okay, well, that is great. Well, guys, I really cannot wait to tear into tonight's movie, so how about we jump in?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, Mike, why don't you tell everyone what we've got for them today?
Well, today's episode is called Seung Mu Wan Jambi, or Zombies Up the Caboose, because we watched The Train to Busan.
We sure did. Train
It
to
was
Busan.
great.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It was released on July 2016. It is a South Korean zombie apocalypse movie about a father and daughter who board a train traveling from Seoul to Busan. During their journey, most of the population becomes flesh-craving zombies, leaving the passengers to fight for their lives against the zombies and each other. It had a budget of approximately $8.7 million US and had a box office return of approximately $87.5 million, so almost exactly 10 times its budget. So yeah, it did okay. It has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 95% from critics and 88% for an audience score, which is another one of those rare examples of where critics scored a horror movie higher than the fans did. You don't see that very often. So,
No.
So Mike, without going into detail, what did you think of this one?
This was far more riveting and emotionally hard-hitting than I expected a zombie movie to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because usually they're all about gore and shock and, you know, people making stupid mistakes and getting everybody killed, and it's just like you'd hardly believe that anybody would act this way. And then you see this movie and you're just like, oh my God, I could see people acting this way.
Yeah. You lightly touched on a subject that I felt about the movie after I saw it. As a matter of fact, actually, while I was watching it, without giving away any spoilers, I made the comment to my friends who were viewing it with me. I said, have you noticed that the people who are unselfish and are doing things to try to help one another are the ones who are living the longest? And with the exception of one character that didn't do one good thing for the entirety of the movie, all the way to the end, those who were less about themselves survived the longest. And I thought that was a very interesting social commentary that they made with that, especially with the little girl who was so willing to give up her seat to the older ladies, and her father is kind of like, oh, you don't have to do that, he's trying to teach her that she doesn't have to be for other people, she can just be for herself without thinking about anyone else. And then of course he has that redemption that he goes through. He does have a redemption that he evolves into, which I think is very beautiful to see in this scripting.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I always appreciate a fresh take on the zombie apocalypse film, and this one certainly delivered on that. So,
and sadly, of course, America, they're supposedly doing a remake of it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna watch it. This is already what World War Z wanted to be. I'm just gonna stick with the original.
Yeah. World War Z, just stick to the book with World War Z. So if you haven't already seen it, don't just read the book.
Yeah, I did kind of see elements of that in this. Like, especially when you see them, like, taking down helicopters and, like, just, like, coming out in, like, a tidal wave of, like, meat. It was just...
Yeah.
I was just like...
Think about the overall story of Train to Busan, though. Wouldn't it have made a great chapter in the World War Z novel?
I think it would have.
Someone telling their story, about getting on this train, trying to get out of their city.
Yeah. And I do think it would have. And the reason why it would have made a good chapter, but furthermore, it does make good for a good full-length film. You have such a simplistic idea. Zombies on a train. You're trapped on a train. Simple idea. It's the old school haunted house scenario. You're in a haunted house, you're stuck there, you can't leave, you just have to deal with it. But it's also a character study on how people do deal with it.
For sure. So since we're already getting into this one pretty good, and I think we've got lots more to talk about, let's start breaking this one down. Now, in previous regular episodes, we talked about movies that's been out for quite some time. So I didn't think a spoiler alert was necessary. But since this one is relatively new, consider this your warning. We will be talking about specific plot points. And if you want to see it first, stop listening now and come back to us after you've seen it.
And now that you've seen the movie, let's talk.
Yeah, so let's hit the list. What we liked about this one. Mike, you want to start us off?
What I liked right away was the zombie deer. You don't often see the animals getting affected by the zombie viruses in these movies. And the fact that he just hit the deer and took off, like, I just thought to be a bit more damage to the car, but then again, it wasn't a male deer. And then we just see the deer get up, like, do some spazzing and twitching, and then we get to see the eyes and, like the bleeding gums, and I'm like, oh shit, this is like Zombambi. I really wanted to see that deer become the vector for infection. Like, just trailing through people's yards and houses, like a more fatal version of the opening scene from Grown Ups 2.
Yeah.
and
just like ripping Adam Sandler to pieces. And
I was going to say, as long as Adam Sandler's still in it, and like he's the first victim, that'd be.
Well, you could also take that as another to another scenario. Let's say you have the zombie deer, a hunter shoots it and serves it up to the family. Would the meat still be infected when they cook and eat it and turn them into zombies?
Oh, that would have been great. Bambi's revenge.
And now we know where the talking deer head from Evil Dead 2 came from as well.
It's an origin story.
There you go. So Evil Dead 2 takes place in the future. Remember that.
Yeah, we see an American hunt it, take off a head, and then like the rest of the family takes the meat home to like eat it, and that's where they get infected, and they just tear through the neighborhood while he's just like, boy, it's a good thing I didn't eat this thing. I'm just going to take it up to my cabin. Nothing's going to happen to me there.
I'm going to revisit the zombie deer in a little bit because there is something I want to mention of that. But first of all, like the first thing that got me about this movie was the pace. It starts after the deer scene. We got a few minutes that where the pace is slowed down a bit. But once they reach a train, man, this movie takes off and really doesn't slow down again.
Just like
it
the
is just
train.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. And also, the further it goes, the more momentum it picks up.
Hmm.
One thing I've noticed with most Asian films, and this one does that as well, you have an introduction to the horror at the beginning, and it's a small introduction, and from there it does a spiral effect. You start off very gradually, and then as it continues on, it becomes worse and worse and worse in the horrific sense of what's going to kill you, what's going to take over, and it's a tension that builds with you through the entirety of the film, and that's what this one did.
For
Yeah, like
sure.
it's not like she just rocks into the train and bites somebody. It's like we get to see some family drama, and then an infected woman runs into the train, and then we get to see some more family drama, get introduced to the passengers, and then we see the back to the girl flipping out in the bathroom, and then we get to see some more drama, more characters, and then she finally comes out, bites somebody, and then you think that's it, but nope, more drama, more characters, and then finally the lady's just like running through the hall, like ah, well, this lady's like on her back like a demented monkey, and like then we
Yeah,
finally get to see the shit kick off. So yeah, the pacing is fantastic.
absolutely.
And one of
So,
my favorite scenes, and this was when I did not think it could get any more intense at that moment. And and the thing is, like, I'm expecting the zombies to bust through the door, but for some reason this made it even more intense for me. I think maybe it's because it was the free will of this elderly lady who decided to get up, walk to the door, have that moment with her zombie sister, then open it and just let the zombies kill everyone.
hmm,
That
yeah,
was beautiful.
she just kind of looked around first and said, like, "Yeah, I'm surrounded by pieces of crap, so let's
Yeah, people like
let's
this
take
don't
care of this."
deserve to survive,
Yeah,
and they don't.
nope, sure. So another thing I want to add is because, as I said earlier, I love this original take on the zompocalypse. And now, when I say original, I mean we have seen this type of zombies before. Of course, they're very a la 28 Days Later. But to have the whole thing play out in such close quarters really upped the intensity. I felt on edge during most of the movie and kind of claustrophobic. It was very effective. The best way I could describe it would be 28 Days Later meets Snowpiercer.
I could see that, yeah.
That's the two biggest influence I could see there, and it really worked. It was a great job.
Well, you're working with multiple fears here. You're working with the zombie, you're working with claustrophobia, and what I thought was really interesting and something I had never seen done before in any zombie movie or book for that matter is how when they went into the tunnels, the darkness disoriented the zombies and they
Yes.
were safe to move through the darkness. Normally, the trope would be darkness makes it creepier, darkness makes it scarier. But in this, darkness is actually making it better.
Mhm.
It's the exact opposite of the movie Blood Hunters.
Yes.
Yep.
It's a part of me, it kind of, I might be just using my author brain here, I don't know. But a part of me almost kind of wondered if they were trying to make the message of, well, if you're in the day and the light and you're seeing everything, you're having to face reality. Reality is much worse than just keeping your head under the covers or, staying in the darkness. It's that dark and bliss of being ignorant and blissfully ignorant at that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So, Mike, anything? What's next on your list?
I liked like the other survival techniques they used, like using the phone as a remote distraction and then climbing along the baggage shelving.
Yes. And I kind of thought, especially when it was getting into technology more, you used to see sci-fi reference technology in its horror stance, such as it would have the computers go insane, like 2001 Space Odyssey. And you could say, okay, well, that's a fear of technology. That's a fear of what technology is going to do to us. Well, in this, technology pretty much saves the day in a few circumstances. And I think that's pretty neat.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yep. So Sheldon, what about you? Other
Yeah.
likes?
Well, I had one, but actually, just as you were wrapping this up, I got a text from a friend of mine, and he's watching. He literally, as we're recording this, he is watching this movie, and he said, "Oh, fast zombies. What type of zombies do you like? Fast or slow?" And that's a good question, because usually I prefer the Romero, I guess the best way to call it, Romero type of undead shambling zombie, over the fast-moving rabbit-like infected human. But now I'm thinking about it, the realism, as real as a zombie movie is going to get, at least, makes it scarier. You know, like the whole undead thing is kind of creepy and everything, but when it comes to an actual threat, having this infected human that can just blast at you at full, sprinting speed is much more effective.
Yeah, they're not like rotting corpses. They're like still alive. They're just their adrenal glands are now just fully deployed.
You can't speed walk away from these zombies.
No, you can't. And the thing is, it makes sense though. It's like what you just said. They're fresh. They haven't been dead for a long time. So if you think about it, they're still pretty much alive. They're not like a zombie that's been buried for weeks, months, years, whatever, and they are waking up from that rigor mortis.
Oh, that's the thing. Are they even dead though? I mean, we see them suffer. Like, if you break their neck, we don't see them getting up from that, but they do recover from like near fatal injury. But that's the thing. Like, are they alive, or are they just like completely berserk enraged, but like dead to the world? But
good point. Something else that I'm going to get back to later. But they were swarming. But like what I liked about it is that once again it's a little more realistic, because they're fast. They run the swarm, but it reminded me swarming more like a swarm of bees, not like a fluidic swarm like the World War Z movie. Where there was literally waves of them.
Yeah, they're like the coins in Scrooge McDuck's bank. Like, they'll form like waves.
Yes. And so, yeah, I liked it. This was effective. I think this is more of... it's scary in a different way than the undead type of zombies.
Conveniently, also, when they try to swarm you, they trample over each other, so you really only have to deal with the vanguard of the swarm, while the rest of them just trip over each other.
Now, they were doing a pretty good job of getting onto the train at the end, when they were holding onto the train and you had the ones from the back climbing over the other ones to get to the front.
Yeah.
I had not seen that before.
Yeah, and actually slowing the train when it's like 50 of them. It's like it's like, funny enough, they're on a train and yet they're like a wedding, they're like a bride's train.
Yeah, that's a good point. Imagine how crappy it was for the ones on the bottom.
Oh my god. Just this road rash.
Oh.
So, Alexander, is there a specific point you want to bring up for something that you really liked about it?
I like the creativity with it, because the thing is, as a creator, you have to consider what's been done before and introduce something new. It's very difficult to introduce something new into a society that's pretty much seen it all. But what you have to do is find inspiration in the classics, but then at the same time try to rid yourself of some of the tropes, if not all of the tropes, and then try to present new scenarios, new angles. Character development has to be a big part of that. And then also at the same time, you have to think about, what am I going to do in this that hasn't been done before? The darkness disorienting the zombies slowing down the train by hanging on to it. There are so many elements in this that hadn't been done before in any movie or book that I had seen or read. And so even though we're dealing with the age-old subject of zombies, it is presented in a new light that gives us some additional food for thought. And also for the zombie movies I've seen in the past, they tend to make more of a political statement. And even though this one does make a minor political statement, it makes more of a social statement on being selfish. And so I really admired that the most.
Yeah. So I want to bring that's a good segue into my next point because, and we've mentioned this a couple of times already, but one of the things I really loved about this is that it had an emotional side to it.
It did.
Sometimes it was a little on the nose, but effective nonetheless. Like case in point, you mentioned about the little girl giving up her seat and the father saying, why are you doing that? You don't have to do that. Like worry about yourself. And the little girl says to him at one point after he says this a couple of times, she actually tells him, "You only care about yourself. That's why mom left."
Yeah.
And holy crap. And when you realize that this is like, what was she, like 8 years old?
Twist the knife.
Yeah.
I want to just for a moment admire and bring to note of everyone who's listening how phenomenal of an actress this little girl was.
Oh, for sure.
Oh.
She was phenomenal. And the scene that really tugged on all of our heartstrings, because as I said, I watched it with a few friends. And these are friends that as we're watching a movie, they find jokes and humor and everything, and they spout out jokes at the TV. It's like sitting in a room with two Elviras, which I'm not even that's awesome. But about maybe...
Oh, hold on. Pause for a moment. I'm just getting an image of me sitting in a room with two Elviras. Okay, continue.
But after about maybe the first 10 minutes, there were no jokes made throughout the movie. It had everyone's undivided attention. Mm-hmm. And the scene at the end where she has to let her father go, unwillingly, of course, but he kills himself to save the woman and his daughter. And so that's very heartbreaking. And it's filmed in a way where you can feel the little girl's pain. Now, to even make it worse is when the woman and the daughter are walking down the tunnel and the soldiers get the call, shoot them. There's no way to determine if they're human or not. Shoot them. Mm-hmm. And it's that suspense of, oh my God, is this going to happen? I've invested so much in these characters, even more so than some of the Walking Dead characters. They're just going to die.
Oh, the people that sacrifice themselves.
I was about to go Kathy Bates on this. I was about to be like, where's my sledgehammer? But when the little girls start singing and they realize that they're humans, okay, that's a relief. But then once again, you get hit hard in the heart with what she's singing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not afraid to throw in the emotional punches. It's not afraid to have heart with it. And I think that's what a lot of horror movies are now missing is heart.
Absolutely. You nailed it right there. Yeah, and that's some of the bigger examples. And then there's some smaller ones too, like you mentioned about the elderly sisters, about what happens there, and not only and to the scene where the passengers start divide and start turning on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. It just had a really strong emotional side to it, and more movies need to explore that. This is a relatively low budget zombie movie, and it invokes so many emotions. Just terrific job.
I look at it as being a movie that shows typical human nature that just happens to have zombies in it.
Yeah.
That's that, and I don't want people to think that, oh, you see more of this versus the zombies. No, the writer-director was able to combine the two very much through the movie.
Absolutely, yes. Don't because we're praising its emotional side. Don't think that that means less like hardcore zombie action, because that is not the case.
And the father, the one who ended up getting bitten while he was on the train, the one who was married to the pregnant woman, he was kicked butt. He was knocking
Oh,
off zombies left and right with his bare hands. I'm
my
like,
boy,
dude,
my
you
man.
are a hero.
The
You
Korean
are a
Hulk, I
hero.
believe you texted me, Mike, last night when you were watching this.
Oh yeah, it's like, oh yeah, Sanghua Smash.
Mhm. Yeah.
and and I like the humor that it did provide, such as the bathroom's taken. There's two people in there. I'm like, okay, open relationship much, or what's going on? That was funny.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I was like, wow, it really made me think of how quickly I went to like, oh, somebody's getting on in there instead of thinking, oh, there's a pregnant lady in there. That's what he means.
And that's how we've been conditioned to think. That's how we've been conditioned to think through mainstream entertainment mostly. I know, especially with American movies, it's the tropes left and right for the most part. That's why when I go towards movies, I try to gravitate towards foreign films or indie films.
Mhm.
It's not as much catering to the leave your brain at the door audience.
Yeah, excellent. So, Mike, what's next on your list?
Well, yeah, the next note was like the touching negligent father angle, so that was covered. So, another moment that I have here is, oh my flaming train.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
When that was coming up, I was like, all right, what's going to happen here? Is this going to kill them all with one hit? Because the movie paces in such a way where you lose track of time. You don't know if you've hit the hour and a half mark or 2 hour mark, and it could end at any moment.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. And my note for that scene actually was like, oh yeah, sure, why not?
what?
What the hell not? What else could go wrong?
Oh my god, yeah. And the next note I had was like at the end where they finally get to the station or at the end of the line, and all I have as my note is like, all things considered, the smoky cave of darkness is preferable.
Hmm.
Yes.
I mean, if there are zombies in there, they're probably banging against the walls, so sure, why not? And funny enough, like I was wondering, like, why was the South Korean girl like singing a Hawaiian song? Because I know that song is like Aloha, Hawaii, farewell to thee. It's
Hmm.
a song from like the 1870s.
Yeah, and the thing is, what we really don't know about her family is we do know this much. Her father's really wealthy. And yes, she is very young. Perhaps they had a chance to go to Hawaii. Who knows? Maybe she fell in love with the song through that aspect, anyway. But also at the same time, let's say, she is a kid. Disney is a big franchise throughout the world. Who's to say she didn't find Lilo and Stitch and pick it up from that, because they sing it in that.
I thought you
Took
were
the
going to
words right out of
mention.
my mouth.
I thought you were going to mention Mickey and Donald at the beach when Mickey's playing his ukulele, Goofy and Donald are trying to go surfing, and Donald's little lake catches fire. Oh, that was.
But yeah, you did touch a good subject there, because we were kind of speculating. Well, how did this song come into her favoritism? Was it through TV? Was it through visiting the location? But no matter what the reasoning was, her singing that did end up pulling the heartstrings. And I
Oh,
think that it's a song that a lot of people do know, no matter what country you're in. And a lot of times it's a happy song that's sung until we meet again. And under this circumstance, unless there's some miracle that happens where her dad is resurrected as a hero zombie, which I don't see that happening, we all know there's not going to be any meeting again, unless in the afterlife, because they did kind of touch on that a little bit with the afterlife. Some, not
Un-
much. It was a little bit.
unless they show up and the guards are just like, "You weren't bitten, are you? It's okay because we got the cure." And then they're just like, "Wait a second! All I had to do was just leave my dad here." Ah,
Talk about the ending of The Mist.
Okay. Now, all right. I'm already, I'm already still trying to recover. My emotions are still trying to recover from this movie. Let's not bring up the mist.
and my
So,
my last like was just a note here going, "Oh gee, the spineless coward you allied yourself with betrayed you at the first opportunity. Killed surprise."
yeah, really. Oh, that guy was a piece of shit.
Oh God, yeah. Here's the thing. I'm happy that he did become a zombie. I'm happy because he had that horror of realizing he was becoming a zombie. I just wish that there had been a few minutes more where he realized he was really screwed.
Hmm.
Because that thought process there, it's much more terrifying than being ripped to pieces a bit at a time over a matter of days. And I am glad that he was able to say, "I want to go home. I'm scared." I'm glad that he had that fear that he had jeopardized and put other people in.
Yeah, for sure. So the only thing I got listed on my list, left on my list, I should say, that I want to bring up was just one scene in particular. When they stop at a station and get swarmed on the escalators, that scene was freaking crazy. It was total pandemonium, absolutely brilliant, just utter chaos. And because I've been heading down to subway sometimes, and when I see that type of area, all I can think of is that if there was any type of emergency to happen here with the crowds on the escalators and the stairs, this would turn into a freaking disaster. And I've thought about that many times, and now my fears have been justified because you get to see that happen in this scene. When they start getting swarmed and everybody's just falling down, tripping over each other, they're piling up. You can't tell who's zombies and who's human. It was fantastic.
Again, that's another thing that was utilized that we really don't see much of in horror cinema. Yeah, the escalators had been used before. Well, the elevators, escalators, whichever you want to call them. But they had been used before in horror cinema, but not in this angle. You have an American Werewolf in London where the werewolf is chasing the singular guy up the escalator. That's not going to be pandemonium. That's just one guy dying. There's another movie called The Kiss. It's an old 1980s voodoo movie where a chick gets her hair trapped in an escalator when she falls and it scalps her. Again, singular person. Even Final Destination, but that wasn't masses of people. This,
Yeah.
when I saw people going up the elevators, I was thinking they are going to be completely screwed if they are faced with zombies, and I hope it happens. I want to see it, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
you got zombies behind you, and even the escalators are just like, "Nope, you go by now."
And it really shows too, because like people don't in an emergency situation like this, people don't think logically. Because what did some of the people that managed to get out of the station get away? All they had to do was get back on the train, get on the train to be safe. What did they do? They went straight to the cabins that they, were full of zombies and opened up the door, releasing the zombies onto them.
Yeah, like, hey, let's be stupid and kill more of ourselves. Let's feed the horde.
Hmm.
Well, you have to consider, and I don't want people to think that I hate human beings by saying this, because I don't. But you have to consider the amount of people who just are not observant in everyday life to start with. You can have signs in a store saying store closing, and you're still going to have one person come in and ask if they're hiring new people. Um, this under the circumstance of what it is, the pandemonium and catastrophe all hitting, it's like they're just thinking, get on the train, get on the train. It doesn't matter what door. And it's another thing that we see a lot of in society about how people don't think before they act.
No, absolutely. Okay, so Mike, did you have anything else that you in particularly liked about this one that you want to bring up?
I'm all exhausted with the likes. I'm ready to rip this movie apart.
Okay, Alexander, anything in particular you wanted to bring up before we head to whatever we didn't like about it?
No, I think we covered all the good stuff.
All right. So I don't know about you guys, but my dislikes list is very short.
Same.
Mhm. So I'm going to start off because this is something that Mike already touched on. I had to put it in the dislike category, not for the reason that you liked it, Mike, but the whole. I think it was a missed opportunity for zombie animals. Okay, the first scene ends with, like you said, a truck driver hitting a deer and leaving it for dead. And as he drives away, the seemingly dead deer gets up, and we see it's a zombie deer. And then we cut to the title screen, and it's never brought up again.
Yeah.
How freaking awesome would it have been for the survivors to have to deal with some zombie animals at some point?
Exactly. Exactly. That was actually one of my dislikes, because I was wondering exactly, even if it was just for a split second, an indication as they're on the train and they're going from point A to point B, they see some herd of zombie animals running out of the woods towards the city.
Buffalo.
Yeah. Especially considering, like, some of these crazy foreign animals that would have been there. That's
I know. We should have got animal swarms. That.
Yeah.
Oh my god, such best. It's like Chekhov's. It's like Chekhov's zombie deer. You show a zombie deer, you use the zombie deer.
Well, let's not lose all hope entirely, because they are working on a sequel.
Well, did you know there was a prequel? Soul Station?
No.
It's an animated prequel telling you what happened to Soul Station after the day before the events.
I had no idea that existed.
So, what's the name of the prequel? I have to hunt this down.
It's called
now.
Soul Station.
Soul Station. Okay.
I'm writing it down now.
And I'm not much into anime or anything like that at all, but this has my interest enough where I'd watch it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when I'm talking about the zombie animals, I'm not talking about something cheesy like, I'm not talking about the Zombies movie.
Oh, God.
But something subtle, like it's something subtle, but still knows, like even like something that when they're running from the station, like during the escalator scene, when they run out of the station to try to get back on the train, like getting swarmed by zombie birds or something.
Well, you have to consider swarms of anything is terrifying to start with. May it be a swarm of locusts or a swarm of tigers. Swarms of anything are terrifying.
Yeah.
And so I do think that they could have definitely utilized the animals more. It could have been, I'm not saying like, oh, it had to be this way or anything of the sort, but like even with Pet Sematary, Stephen King was able to take Pet Sematary and take the domestic house cat and made it absolutely terrifying. And if you use that same scenario with wild animals, then it's even worse.
For sure,
I don't
yeah.
know. The cat's supposed to be like an agile hunting machine, and a 3-year-old got a bigger body count than it. So I'm going to have to disagree on the lethality of that cat.
So I'm very curious about you guys. Alexander, how about you? Is there anything else other than the lack of zombie animals that you didn't like about this movie? And when I say didn't like, I mean could be even just be something that you think could have been improved on.
I wish that I do kind of wish that the train conductor, I wish he would have been a little bit wiser rather than to jump off the train and save the guy who had thrown everyone else under the bus,
including him.
Including him. But also at the same time, I couldn't see that any other way. That's more so myself saying, "Oh, you were almost out, and you had a good heart. You meant well." But also at the same time, it goes to show you how an individual who is for themselves will always be for themselves when they are as hardcore as what that man was. And but as I said, that was just out of hopes of, oh well, good, at least he's going to make it.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really have no complaints. It kept my interest. I became married to the characters, and just the zombie animals mostly, and the minor things such as wishing that old jerk face would have got a little bit more of a comeuppance there. I wanted him to get just one good punch in the nose a few times at least. And please do elaborate on that humor. One good punch in the nose a few times at least.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, Mike, I'm curious, buddy. Tell me something you didn't like.
Well, the dad gets her a Wii for her birthday, and then we get a cut of the Wii she already has. But what I had an issue with was that the box is behind it on the dresser. I mean, is that meant for stupid dad, or is that meant for stupid me, who's not supposed to guess what an unboxed Wii looks like?
I did not realize it was behind him on the dresser. I thought it was actually in front of him, really, because when he sat down, I was like, "Oh man, really, Dad? Seriously?" But yeah,
Who keeps the box?
I was too busy in the humor of it to really think about that too much.
I mean, I don't know if they were trying to insult me or just like, she has to leave the box there because she knows eventually Dad's going to ask if you've got a Wii. So we got to leave the box there because he wouldn't know what it looks like.
Leave it to you, though, to go for it. I shouldn't be surprised that you go directly for the Nintendo reference.
I'm the guy with the Nintendo podcast. Of course I would.
Exactly.
I'm just glad they put that there for me, but I'm just like, wait a second, are you trying to insult me? Or have you already insulted me?
Mm-hmm.
Then we mentioned the second dislike I had, which I wrote down is, I know you're running for your life, but you just got off the train with these assholes, and you open the infected caboose? You know what? Natural selection is a bitch, and you got it coming.
Yes. Yep. Back to the box. Let's speculate a little bit. Because we never saw the gaming system outside of the box, or
yeah,
her
we did.
playing.
It was on her dresser, okay. And the remotes are right beside it.
And it was right beside it. Okay, yeah, that was a little blurred there. I was gonna try to redeem it for a second. I'm like, well, maybe she hadn't opened it yet, but no, that there's no redeeming.
It was connected up there. The remotes were out. It was just like out there, and then she keeps the box behind it against the wall, and I'm like, really? Is your dresser's not that plain?
Well, this could have easily been fixed had Dad simply looked over, saw it. I'll be right back. I will be right back, and then maybe a few hours later return with another box or another gift or something.
I'll get you a PlayStation 3. The 4's been out for a year, Dad. I don't know what the Korean word is for mother effer, but I'm pretty sure he'd be muttering that.
And then he just pulls out his wallet. It's like, hey, do you like cash?
And she replies, no, Visa works better.
I can't spin this online. You stupid.
Am I supposed to stuff this into my computer? No.
Okay, so I only have one more thing on my list, and it does kind of fall into nitpicking, but the only thing I can say for a dislike is that the zombies were a bit inconsistent. Their ability seemed to depend on what was the need for the to move the story forward. Like basically, their abilities depended on the situation the main characters were in. Sometimes the zombies are being taken out with baseball bats, even hand-to-hand combat, with the Korean Hulk. Other times they're falling from helicopters and hitting the ground with enough impact to crush cars, and only to jump up and start sprinting towards victims. So it was a little uneven in places, but like I said, that's very minor.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like their durability is like, let's see. Well, the only time they never got up is when he did like those underarm neck snaps, and I'm just
Hmm.
like,
Oh yeah.
did this guy like watch MMA and just think pussies?
Yeah.
I
I
would
just
honestly, I would honestly like more of a backstory on all of the characters because I mean, like what you just said about the Korean Hulk. There, I mean, what kind of background did he have? I mean, it easily could have been summed up by. Just some kind of symbol or sign on his person, a shirt or something showing that he had been a part of like some type of athletic wrestling or something, you know?
hmm
All he needs is a tap out wife beater.
Yeah, that's very true. Okay, so anything else that bugged us about this movie? Because honestly, I'm done. Like I've got nothing else bad to say about it.
If I had something else bad to say about it, I would be grasping for straws.
Yeah,
And that's where I come in. So,
grasp away.
I just got like three quick ones. Like, seriously, these people can speak and use phones, and you're still claiming that they're infected. And then I summed it all up with one note. I hate Korean Trump so bad.
Yes.
Yeah, I was waiting for it. And did at one point didn't he actually start building a wall?
Oh my God.
It's a wall made with ties.
Well, they made a wall of luggage at one point. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
ow.
And tellingly, it didn't work.
Hmm.
And I do have to applaud how they used very minor resources to stay alive as long as they did, such as using their shirts to reinforce the doors where they wouldn't go against their will and such. That was neat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
So
should be
It would have
resourceful.
been nice if any of them just even had a Bowie knife so you could like stab them in the spinal cord and just paralyze them. But no, none of them even had a blade.
mhm.
But yeah, I'm out of dislikes.
Yeah. So with that being said, so final verdict, gentlemen, recommend this movie or not?
In a heartbeat, I'd recommend it.
In a lack
Yeah.
of a heartbeat.
Yeah, I definitely would recommend it. Even if you're not a fan of the typical zombie movie, I think you would enjoy this. I'd give them a 9 out of 10 all day long. Great film.
That's excellent.
I agree as well. As a matter of fact, when I finished watching this, I posted online that I had just seen it, and within just minutes, I had like about 100 thumbs ups and probably 50 to 60 comments. Would you recommend it? And to each one, I'm like, hell yes, I recommend. Watch it now. It doesn't matter if you watch the dubbed version or subtitled version. Watch it.
Hmm. Oh, it leads me to a question. Which version did you guys watch?
I watched the dubbed. I don't
Okay.
mind watching subtitle, but one of the friends who was here, she gets easily distracted by subtitles, so we did the dubbed. But I was actually glad I did the dubbed because there was so much going on that I almost fear that I would have missed something had I been reading and watching at the same time.
Right. I did watch the subtitled version, so I think I'm going to give it because I'll definitely be watching this one again in a little while. So I think I'll watch the dubbed version then.
I did not know there was a dubbed version. I would have easily have gone for that. I ended up the version I got didn't even have subtitles. I had to search those individually online and pair them up.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
God.
Yeah, I just grabbed the DVD. On the DVD and Blu-ray, it has a dubbed option on there. My only complaint with the dubbing is, of course, you're not going to get the best voice acting in the world. when you dub a movie. But also at the same time, it's not the worst. It's not like one of these old Godzilla movies where the mouth has quit moving, but words are still coming out. And they actually did do pretty well, to a point where in some areas I was kind of questioning, oh, it looks like they're speaking English. Their lips are kind of moving with the English. But I guess that was just them syncing it up very well.
Cool. Yeah, dubbing has come a long way over the past couple of decades, for sure. Well, that is all the movie coverage for Train to Busan, but we're not done quite yet, because, Mike, I think you have one more thing to bring up.
Yep, I have got my kill of the week. Now, usually I go for like what particular individual kill had the most justice, gravity, but I gotta go for the best mass murder scene we saw was the sister that opened the door. She had a room full of hateful, despicable, fear-driven cowards, and she dealt with them in the only way that suited them. She opened the door, and she let the swarm in.
Movie-wise, that would definitely be my agreement.
Yeah, I'd go for that one for sure. That's a great one.
Now, book-wise, though, if we're talking about Kill of the Week, last night I listened to the audiobook Tortured Souls by Clive Barker. And if you've never read that book, I think it's only available in Kindle and Audible. But there's quite a few very merciless, gruesome kills in that, and it quenched my thirst for gore for at least a day or two.
Awesome. I'm going to have to check that one out. You've brought that up a couple of times now. So whenever I guess it's going to be whenever my next vacation day is, I'll actually get a chance to read something again. I've got a couple of books now to check out. So, guys, we got a question from a fan of the show. And, Alexander, I'm glad you're here for this because I want your answer as well. So, Kat G asked us, if you guys were stranded on a desert island and you were forced to be stuck on it with one villain from a horror movie, who would you choose? Mike, I'm gonna open it up with you first of all.
I'd have to say Count Dracula, because as soon as the sun comes up, I'm saved.
As soon as the sun goes down, you're screwed.
Yeah, really.
Oh, you mean like if he burns up in the sunlight first?
Yeah. It's like if he like comes out of his coffin and I'm just like, oh shit, it's Dracula, and he's like, oh shit, it's like 3 p.m. And I'm like, well, as soon as I get this dust out of my new bed, I've got some shade.
Okay, Alexander, how about you?
Oh, you know what? I would probably go with. I'm trying to think of something that would save me here, but I'm just gonna go out on a limb and say Candyman.
All right.
Pretty much, Candyman arrives like when you summon him, but I mean, if he's already summoned and on the island with me, at least I can count on him to kill me quickly. I mean, he guts people over and done with. There's no sort of torturing with it. It's just over and done with.
Hey, can you kill me not being on an island? Can you kill the isolation?
Considering I had this question like in my email, I should have checked it earlier and actually thought about it. But I'm trying to think of who I would choose. I'm gonna say Kevin Spacey's character from Seven, because I'm pretty confident I can beat up Kevin Spacey. So there.
See, with me, I wouldn't want to live on a deserted island. With me, all right, I have a lot of Irish in me. My people don't tan, we burn. So that's going to be hell already. Just give me something that's going to kill me off quickly.
There you go. That's a good answer. Cool. That's a cool question. I like that. Okay. Well, everybody, we want to hear from you. You have questions, comments, movie suggestions, feedback, ancient Mayan curses, whatever. You can send anything you have for us to graveyardshiftpod@gmail.com. You can reach out to us on Twitter at GYS_horrorpod, or contact us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegraveyardshiftpod. And if you're feeling generous, you want to make a financial donation to the show, you can do so at www.patreon.com/graveyard. All the money goes to the upkeep and promotion of the show, and it gives you access to some pretty nice Patreon exclusive bonus episodes, so you'll enjoy that. And Alexander, if people wanted to read some of your work, how could you do that?
Pretty much all of my work is available online. You can order it through just about any bookstore. But you can go to my website, www.alexandersbrown.com, and that's S as in Stephen. Once you go to that website, you'll be able to access all of my books in ebook and print. And also, I have a short film that's on there called The Acquired Taste. It's based off of a short story in Traumatized. And it was a labor of love when we did the film, so don't be expecting any big Hollywood thing. But it was fun, and I worked with a lot of talented people on that, so feel free to check it out for some good gore. Other than that, once you get onto that website, there is a Contact Me button. And if you click on it, it will hook you up with me via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, my blogs, YouTube. I think I'm forgetting something, but it's on there. And also, if you're out of country, my book should be available through whatever Amazon provider your country has, such as Amazon.uk or Amazon.au. Anything of the sort.
Excellent. Okay, well, we will put that in the show notes for this episode so people will have easy access to your website.
All right, thank you.
Not a problem. Well, Alexander, thank you for joining us. This was great. I really hope you enjoyed being on our show today.
Oh, I did. I absolutely had a great time, and if ever you need a returning guest, I'd be more than happy to come back.
Oh, you are in the books, my friend. We are going to have you back. And
Thank
Mike,
you.
if people want to, if people can't get enough of your sweet voice, where could they hear more of you?
Well, you can hear me reading each and every issue of Nintendo Power magazine with my co-hosts on the Playing with Power podcast.
Yeah, check it out, folks. If you're a fan of retro Nintendo games and you had a subscription of Nintendo Power Magazine back in the day like I did, check it out. You won't be disappointed.
Or you want to hear what I'm like when I'm not being restrained and and friendly for the public, then you can check me out on that show.
And guys, I forgot to mention too that if you're listening to our show, then you already know how to get it. But you can also find us on iTunes, and if you're on iTunes, we would really appreciate if you rate, review, subscribe. Really, helps the show so much get noticed and draws attention. So if you could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. That is our show for this week. We hope you enjoyed. We hope you enjoy our guest. Check out his work. And please come see us again on the Graveyard Shift. Until next time, I'm Sheldon.
I'm Mike.
Take care. How long were you waiting to play that, Mike?
Well, I already did it during the middle, but I couldn't find the original one yet.
Ah, so Alexander,
Yes.
still with us? Okay. I'm hoping you didn't disappear like after we.
Oh no, I didn't want to break in on the song. I'm like, oh, I'll just let this play out.
Excellent.
I really thought when I typed in Train to Busan that I would get her singing, because I see her face, but I'm not hearing her singing. So I wonder if you can sue someone for like false advertising on a YouTube video.
Sue them because you tried to steal their audio and it wasn't what you wanted.
Yeah, they didn't give me what I wanted to steal.
Oh yeah, definitely, Alexander. We definitely want to. I'm not surprised because writers usually are, but you're a great conversationalist. So yeah, that's what we like on the show for sure.
Well, thank you. I had a great time doing this, and it was lots of fun, lots of laughs. Had intelligent conversations, which that's something that I beg for every day, but I don't necessarily get every day. So
I like having, intelligent conversations about horror movies, which is certainly something I don't get every day. I think this is one of the main reasons we even started this podcast.
Well, if you're ever on a live podcast and it's not going well, you tell them they do things much more professionally on the Graveyard Shift, Horror with Sheldon and Mike. Like, just plug us and then leave.
Yes. And I'm sure there's going to come a day when I probably will have to do that. But the only way I would is if someone actually just really pissed me off. And I mean, for the most part, when it comes down to shows and such, I mean, we're all just kind of getting used to the niche for the most part when they're starting off. So I understand that. But there have been a few where I wanted just to say, hey, screw you, buddy, and click.
Just make sure to plug us to their audience before you leave.
Oh, totally.
A spike plug never hurt anybody.
That'll be if Westboro ever puts me on their podcast. I won't even give them the benefit of a doubt. I'll be like, y'all should listen to this. Oh, and by the way, screw you, Click.
When you're as good as they are, you can call me.
Yes.
Howdy! Oh, so good. We've had such problems before. Oh, where's Sheldon? Did he make it through the wormhole with me?
I don't know. It might just be you and I for a minute.
Oh no. We lost Sheldon in the time stream.
Time to do the time warp.
Well, first we gotta go through all the archaeology books and see if we can find any cave drawings saying, help me assholes, I'm here.
Maybe if we look hard enough, shine some light on it, might be able to find something.
I don't know what the year is, but I found a sloth as big as me, so that should narrow it down to a couple of millennia.
Hello.
Hey, he's alive! And in this time.
He read the hieroglyphics.
Alexander, good to actually talk to you for real.
Likewise, good to speak with you as well. How are y'all doing?
We were just theorizing which era we left you in is through the wormhole.
Never needed. This is why we were saying we always try to get a little bit of prep time first, because Skype is not always friendly.
Y'all sound pretty good and clear to me, so hopefully I sound good and clear to y'all.
Well, you do have a bit of a problem. You sound Southern. I don't know if that's...
Oh, I can't help with that. Now, a lot of it did get pulled out when I was in high school. I had a drama class, and before that it was, well, I reckon I ain't done that yet. So at least that's gone.
At least you start repeating words in the sentence.
I know, right?
I had a similar experience, Alexander, because I'm in Toronto right now, but I'm actually originally from Newfoundland.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you're familiar with a Newfoundland accent, but it sounds kind of like you combined an Irish accent and English accent and poured a lot of booze on top.
And then you recorded it on a 45 and played it at 78.
Exactly.
Well, you had me at booze, so I mean, whatever is good after that.
Honestly, I'm starting to think that there's more female horror fans because just case in point with us, I think most of our listeners are female.
I don't think it's seen as being as misogynistic as what it once was. I
No,
think that's one of the main things. It's not nearly as misogynistic as something that you might would see coming from the 30s or 40s
or 80s.
or 80s. Yeah,
Yeah.
if you really want to get like, the Friday the 13th in there.
Oh no, we're talking about The Evil Dead. Because, you talk about how it's such a nice, good movie. Like, you don't think there's any misogyny in it. And then you watch it again and you're like, I forgot about the rape tree.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, I'm not a female, but even that scene made me cross my legs. It made me feel
Oh
for
yeah.
girl.
Even
Yeah.
watching the Evil Dead DVD with Bruce Campbell's commentary was just the best because when it gets to that scene and he's like, now for some reason during our first screening of this movie we lost about half of our female audience. I'm not sure why. And then you see it happen. He's like, oh yeah, that's right.
Oh God, I was at a con and I saw this T-shirt that was absolutely amazing. It had a little girl sitting under a tree, and the tree had a face on it. And the tree was responding. You didn't see what she said or asked, but it responded by saying, "Why, yes, little girl, I am a magical tree. Haven't you seen The Evil Dead?"
Oh God.
And
Oh,
congratulations, you're the first person to get the name Cerinthia correct on the
Oh.
first try.
Hey, the guy from
Congratulations.
Newfoundland was the first one to pronounce the title right. Yes, take that stereotype.